What is up, everyone, and welcome back to another video. So as you guys probably know, Zero Build Mode is one of the most popular special modes Fortnite has ever had. With tons of players loving this mode and even Zero Build tournaments coming out, there's no doubt that a lot of you guys are wondering how to get more kills and win more games in Zero Build Mode. And that's why in today's video, I'll be doing my ultimate guide on how to dominate Zero Build Mode in Fortnite. Before we get into it though, be sure to drop a like on the video if it helps you out, and consider subscribing as well if you're new to the channel and you want to see more content just like this in the future. Lastly, if you want to show some extra support, then consider using code Teckoh in the item shop. It's 100% free for you and it seriously helps me out a ton. Thank you so much to everyone who's using it. But with all that said and without further ado, let's get into today's video. So starting off the tips of this video, and my first tip for you guys is to always play for positioning in Zero Builds. Whenever you're playing Zero Builds or even watching someone else play it, you'll notice that in the vast majority of fights, the player who starts from high ground or gets the first shots off usually ends up winning. When you're playing Zero Builds, you should be constantly looking for some level of high ground. Not only does it make everyone else more visible to you, but even if you do get shot at, it's going to be a lot easier for you to work around your surroundings than someone on low ground. These can be such simple things like staying on top of hills when you're rotating, going on top of buildings instead of ground floor when you're going through a POI, and all sorts of things of that nature. Playing for positioning is pretty much the best way to set yourself up to win any encounter you run into. Ultimately, your goal should be to always stay in a position where if you were to engage in a fight with anyone around you, you would be at the advantage. And if you're not in that situation, then your primary goal should be to get into that situation as soon as possible. And by doing that, you should find yourself getting way more kills and taking way less damage in fights. Moving on from that though, and the next tip I have for you guys is to build the habit of maintaining constant awareness all around you. Most players have a habit of looking in one direction, running straight there, and they end up being surprised when they get shot at. That's one of the biggest problems that faces a lot of players in Zero Builds, especially people who are more used to build modes where you can simply box up and reassess the situation when you get shot at. On the other hand, in Zero Builds, getting shot at is super unforgiving. Unless you have immediate access to cover, if you're not aware of your surroundings and you get caught off guard, your game is basically over. So regarding how to actually apply this tip, I think that maintaining constant awareness is really something that comes down to habit and constant thought. Your goal should ultimately be to have the subconscious habit of looking around in all directions as you move and keeping track of everything happening around you. As you start off, this will probably begin with just you thinking to yourself over and over again, awareness, 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 until it's pretty much drilled into your mind whenever you play. If you watch pretty much any Zero Build pro, you'll notice that the majority of their fights are pretty much over before they start because their opponent has no awareness. The pro takes a couple of shots since the player doesn't know they're there, gets a solid beam, and from there it's basically just a matter of pushing up and cleaning up the little bit of HP they still have left. So do yourself a favor, save yourself the stress of having to fix it, and simply start building the habit of high level awareness as soon as possible. On to our third tip for this video though, and this one is to optimize your loadout for Zero Build Mode. In Zero Builds, the entire focus is on gunplay and positioning compared to building and editing, which makes the loadouts that you select so much more important. Regarding what to actually hold in your inventory, this is largely going to depend on your preference, but what I want to do is at least throw a couple of ideas out there. The first loadout, and probably the most common one I see in Zero Build Mode currently, is going to look something like this. First off is going to be an AR, bonus points if it's a ranger because it can hit from far away, as well as a shotgun, usually a lever or prime right now, also an SMG, preferably a rapid fire, and then you have 2 slots for fast mobility and heals. The first 3 slots are pretty self-explanatory. They're basically a weapon for mid to long range, then a shotgun with a follow-up weapon. For the mobility and heal slots, what I recommend doing is making both of these fast variations. What I mean by that is basically something that you can just throw down quickly and be done with it. For example, things like chug splashes or pizza are great to hold since you can pop them immediately. And for mobility, I personally think the shockwaves are the best move at the moment because they only take a quick moment to throw down and they can get you straight into a fight. I personally think that this loadout is the most well-rounded option unless more mobility items come out or anything of this sort that might outweigh the value of one of those items. And you may be wondering why I only really recommend 1 heal slot rather than 2. And the main reason I recommend that is simply because of the fast-paced nature of Zero Build fights. Most fights in this mode end pretty quickly, so you're able to grab your opponent's heals whenever you get a kill, whereas in build mode, fights usually take a lot longer and they involve a lot more overall damage. And of course, that makes 2 healing slots much more useful. Another common loadout option is something along the lines of a mid to long range AR, usually an Evo Chrome rifle or a hammer AR. Those are the best since they can kind of deal damage from close range. Then you've also got a shotgun and then 3 slots for heals and utilities. This could work totally fine if you're less inclined to use an SMG or you find an AR to work just as well. And the final option is just like that. It has a mid to long range AR, a shotgun, but instead of 3 slots for heals and utilities, you actually hold a sniper instead. So basically it's an AR, shotgun, sniper, and then 2 heals and utilities. Even though because of overshield you can't one-shot with a sniper in regular Zero Build matches if someone's full HP, they still do deal serious damage, and if you snipe someone and follow up with some AR shots, you're going to be in a super easy position to clean up the fight if that doesn't kill them on its own. So if you find that the value of a sniper outweighs that of an SMG for your playstyle, then that loadout is definitely worth considering. Overall though, loadouts are largely going to depend on your preference, but hopefully this gave you a good idea of which option could work best for you. Moving on to the next tip though, and next up we've got a super critical tip, which is to always hug cover. In zero build mode, getting caught out in the open is essentially a death sentence. If your opponent is behind cover sitting on a right hand peak and you're not, then the fight is basically over before the first shot is even fired. To counter this, your goal should always be to hug cover regardless of the situation. This can be things like trees, buildings, or basically anything you can run to and hide behind if you get shot at. Similar to the awareness tip, this is kind of one of those things you have to master through constant thought. When you're in game, just like being aware of your surroundings, you should always be in the mentality of being near some sort of cover. Constantly think of it like this: if I were to get beamed right now, where would I go to cover myself? And if that answer is nowhere, then your goal should be to reposition until you have a good answer to that question. Finally guys, getting into our last tip for today's video, and my final tip for today's video is going to be to grind aim training. As I mentioned earlier in the video, zero build mode is all about gunplay. Being able to hit your shots consistently is basically a guaranteed way to outplay the majority of players in this mode, and it's definitely the most aim intensive mode we've pretty much ever seen in Fortnite. In the end, you can have all the best positioning, game sense, and all that, but you need to be able to hit your shots consistently in order to actually secure kills. I do have plenty of aim based videos on the channel, but for the sake of the video, I'll go over a few quick maps that I really like for these purposes. The first of these maps is going to be Raider 464's 1v1 aim trainer, which is basically an aim duel map that helps you train your aim against the movements that real players make. All you need to do is enter the map either with a friend, or you can enter the matchmaking portal to play with a random player, and from there select an amount of HP and then choose from a huge amount of scenarios where you can use shotguns, SMGs, or even ARs for longer range stuff. Overall, it's a fantastic map that really carries over well into multiple aspects of zero build gameplay, especially when it comes to closer range fights. So if you want to give that a shot, I'll put the code up on screen right now. The second map for this purpose is the classic Fortnite aim training map, which is the Scavic Aim Trainer by Don Wazzy. This map is absolutely amazing, featuring tons of scenarios for all sorts of situations ranging from close range to mid range to long range, and it basically has some of everything. It has shotgun flicks, SMG aim, long range AR aim, and basically everything you could possibly need to hit more shots more consistently in zero build mode. In fact, this map even has its own aim duel section, which you can do with no other players at all. It's basically just a sentry bot, although it is more limited than Raider's map in the sense that it's in one confined area as opposed to all sorts of different scenarios. But with that said, the whole map is single player and it works incredibly well for improving all areas of your aim, so I do definitely recommend that you give this map a shot as well. So if you want to try it out, I'll put the code up on screen right now. And overall guys, regarding aim training, this is definitely something I recommend every serious zero build player focuses on in order to improve. Aim is just so fundamental to this game mode, and if you can out aim everybody you run into, it can make up for a ton of difficult situations you might run into. What I recommend you do is probably just run a few scenarios from each of these two maps every time you get on. If you're looking for a bit more detail on how to actually plan everything out and structure your aim practice, I do have plenty of aim training videos that can help you with that as well. So if you want to get a bit more detailed about it, then feel free to check those out. Overall though, by constantly practicing aim training as part of your practice, you'll find yourself winning way more fights, way more consistently in zero build mode, so I definitely recommend you give this a shot. But with all that said guys, that's going to wrap it up for today's video on how to dominate zero build mode in Fortnite Chapter 3 Season 4 and in future seasons. Overall, by following all the tips in this video, you should find yourself winning fights way more consistently in this mode and hopefully winning way more games as well. If you found this video helpful, then be sure to drop a like on it and consider subscribing as well if you're new and want to see more content just like this in the future. And if you want to show some extra support, then consider using code Teckoh in the item shop too. It's 100% free for you. It only takes a few seconds to type in and it seriously helps me out a ton. As always, thank you so much to everyone who's using it. But with that said, thank you all for watching this video and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.